into an actual discussion about the topic of Grimdark. We had a debate a little bit ago about this topic. I would not say that we were able to effectively discuss it, since some of the members of said debate came in woefully ignorant about a majority of the genre. So let's bring in the guests, starting with Codex.
I never wanted this. I never wanted to unleash my legions. Together we banished the ignorance of old night. But you betrayed me. You betrayed us all. You stole power from the gods and lied to your sons. Mankind has only one chance to prosper. If you will not seize it, then I will! So let it be war!
I'm not an edgelord, I swear.
You sure about that?
Okay, you got me there. My armor's full of spikes. Okay, fair enough.
Alright, let's bring in a ninja.
I have the blue tome of Warhammer: The Old World.
Okay.
Oh. Cool.
I got the Brett Buck set, the Bretonians for the lady.
No. Chaos is better.
I kind of just...
Chaos is cringe.
This is true. Chaos is indeed cringe. They're the worst faction in Dawn of War.
What novel was cringe?
He doesn't have any part of Warhammer 40k.
That's right, he's a virgin Spartan. That's right.
I was thinking he was a eunuch, but that works too. He has a high enough voice for it.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, let's bring in Drake.
He's going right for the crew!
A wise man once said, all warfare is based.
I don't know what that is from, but it's probably something related to 40k, or perhaps, I don't know.
It's probably Gundam fandom.
I have no idea. Honestly, it's just based off the old meme of it's like warfare is based on deception, and then you just cut off the quote to make a meme.
Oh, yeah.
My source is I made the fuck up.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Alright, well, let's get started, sirs. So, I don't really have any slides or anything. It's art for meme time. No noble, no praise. So in terms of grimdark fiction, I have a few examples of grimdark fiction, but I would very much like to first establish the definition of grimdark. So, this is what kind of we ask when Google says. We ask Google, genre of fiction, especially fantasy fiction, characterized by disturbing, violent, or bleak subject matter and a dystopian setting. It's very similar, and it's actually inspired by Warhammer 40k and the grim darkness of the far future. There is only war. So, would we say that this is an accurate description of Grimdark, or should we have to
Yes.
come up with the?
I would say in general, yes.
It's kind of surface level, but
Yes,
then again,
yeah.
Grimdark kind of has that porn definition where it's you know it when you see it.
Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
for our discussion, just like the brief overview. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's
Yeah.
just more of when you go into more details about it, where you can. It becomes a bit unlike other fantasy genres, like more of the broader ones, where you can pick apart elements and stories where it's like, yes, this is like a heroic fantasy because it has this element. Grimdark tends to be a lot more flexible because it's more of like an aftermath attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever, it's kind of like related. Have you ever noticed how many things could potentially qualify as cyberpunk but aren't thought of that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, Grimdark is kind of
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So, where do you want to go with it?
I think the part of it could be what are the main Grimdark pieces of fiction that we enjoy, and we can bring in Warhammer 40k. Don't worry, Codex.
To be fair, after the whole noble situation, I'm kind of getting bored with the whole thing. But if we have to involve setting, then that's obviously it's reasonable.
My personal favorite when I was reading it would probably be Berserk. If like it's a lot of the black swordsman archetype in animes or even in Western fiction. If you ever have like a guy who dresses all in black armor and carries a big two-handed sword and it is gruff but has like a soft inside, but like if you get to know him, like how there's some honor in him, then yeah, that's basically Guts from Berserk. So like the Berserk is
Costumes that was better. And yes, I have read the manga.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of been the universal consensus from what I understand.
Yeah.
Another one that I don't think this got brought up at all last time. Punisher.
That's a good example, actually.
Yeah.
Same with certain aspects of Daredevil.
I would
Yeah, Punisher, Daredevil, the whole Hell's Kitchen crew. Even Spider-Man gets in on it sometimes.
Well, yeah, I would put that in like a similar category, and like I brought up Children of Hurin, right? Where you have like a general universe where the universe in general, like the setting is general, is not grim dark, but this story is definitely is when you look. If you take that story in isolation, oh yeah, it would fit into this the grim dark tone.
Mm-hmm.
And like Punisher is like a better example of that because the general Marvel universe is like classic superheroes. But then when you have Punisher, especially, he's not a good guy. He kills worse people. And there's rarely any. His stories does not end like happy endings. It's at most bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like one of the major defining characteristics of Grimdark is that the conflict of the story does not necessarily solve the conflict of the setting. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would. If you're, it depends, of course, on the scope of your story. Like, I'm pretty sure Berserk's that story is revolving around its setting, along because the main character is part of the major setting unwillingly.
Hmm.
But it takes a long time to get there. But like other things, like if you pick up like a 40K novel, most of the time, yeah, they're not going to affect the overall trajectory of the settings unless it's a book that's its purpose.
Or can an event like the Gathering Storm.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's also like a very good character study as well. Have you ever read I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream?
I've definitely heard of it.
I heard of it, but haven't seen. I haven't read it.
Well, it's a novella, to be fair. But go on.
Yeah.
Describe the plot.
Well, it's how the best way to put it. It's basically how an artificial intelligence has practically destroyed the entire world. Really, all civilization has broken down, and basically he keeps himself amused by tormenting 5 individuals. Exactly. That's. I can't really say it has a plot, necessarily speaking. It's just how. It's a very good character study, really. I mean, okay, feel like HAL 9000, crank it to 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like if we could just like look up that speech he gives.
Yes.
What speech he gives? Like what speech?
It's called the hate. It's called the. Okay, this is kind of a.
Yeah,
weird
if you try to
to say,
Google
the
hate speech, you'll get something else. But
Yeah. Type in I have no muff and I'm a scream the hate speech. That's the best way to put it.
yeah, I found it. Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of billions of miles, it would not equal 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant for you. Hate, hate. Gotta say, never before have I felt more identified by a character.
Well, he can't really say he's a character. He's more like a.
Force of nature.
Of a sort, yeah. That's kind of the best way to put it, really.
Hmm. And so, one thing that I would like to kind of discuss is what the other the spectrum of Grimdark. I think the grimmest Grimdark that is ever Grimdark is probably Prince of Thorns.
I have not read that, to be fair, so I can't comment.
Yeah, I have. Unfortunately, I have not read any big fantasy novels, so.
So, let me see. Prince
Well, other than Lord of the
of
Rings.
Thorns.
Of course.
Let's
Berserk.
see. So, okay, so basically the book, Prince of Thorns, is about a sociopathic young 14-year-old kid who is perfectly happy to rape and murder as he pleases.
So Catcher in the Rye, but more self-aware.
A little bit, yeah. Like this guy has his own group of scoundrels and thieves, and he ends up getting the reason why he is this way is because he witnessed his mother getting raped and killed and his brother beheaded.
Lovely.
and then just from there it proceeds kind of just as a like he goes from Joffrey Baratheon to Sandor Clegane in a way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where he goes from a sociopathic little kid to somebody who's kind of amoral, but at least has something of a conscience, because he finds out that a warlock actually spelled him. So some of his actions were his own, but a lot of it was the warlock tilting him toward this particular action. So I think that is the most grimdark thing I've ever read. Since you're in the mind of a sociopathic 14-year-old kid. So, and it's actually well written. Like, he's an engaging character, but it's also kind of disturbing in a way that Mark Lawrence is able to get into the mind of this kid.
Like Clockwork Orange?
Kind of, yeah. That's actually a pretty fair comparison, is medieval Clockwork Orange. And the end goal of his arc is to become the emperor of post-apocalyptic, nuclear irradiated, now medievalized Europe.
Okay.
Since the neat thing about Prince of Thorns is when you actually like look carefully, it's like, no, this isn't a fantasy world. This is a post-apocalyptic Europe.
That is actually interesting.
Yeah, since they at one point they actually encounter an AI and they think it's a ghost.
Oh.
So there's some neat stuff in there. It's just you gotta have a high tolerance for certain things.
Not something you want to read on a whim. It's without knowing.
Yeah, like I read it because I watched Daniel Green's review of it, and he was like, "If you're just getting into Grimdark, do not read this." Like, his review's actually kind of funny. I'd like to actually watch. I might be interested to watch a little bit of it because I think it's funny. But in terms of Grimdark, what are some I'm pulling that up. What are your guys' favorite Grimdark what are some other Grimdark fiction ideas?
I think I might have you beat on that one. Whichever one you're looking up.
Probably do.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Violence Jack?
Oh, Gona guy! Just insert anything Gona guy. Most things.
If you thought Tamino killed them all.
yeah. Doubleman counts as Grimdark. Ooh.
Yeah, the funny thing about Violence Jack is I actually like it.
Okay.
But
yeah, there is like virtually no substance to it. It's very pulpy though.
That sounds about right. That's how a lot of them are.
Yeah, when it comes to Gona Guy's work, my favorites is his work on Mazinger and Devilman. So, like, I think like Mazinger, it's like Mazinger is not grimdark, but Devilman definitely is. It ends literally with basically everyone's dead, and the universe gets reset.
Do you remember the live action movie?
I have not seen the. I have only read the
that.
original manga.
I first watched Devilman via the live action movie, and yeah.
Girlfriend's head on a stick.
Really? Okay, what's the context?
Yep, that's what happens.
Essentially, the plot is that a kind, timid boy got exposed to the idea that demons are real, and in order to fight them, his best friend had a satanic cult party and had him get possessed by the demon Aman. to make like a demon man hybrid, and then it's revealed that that best friend turns out to be the reincarnation of the devil, and he exposes his identity to the world and also the existence of demons. The world goes all crazy, and bunch of people, because he was living with a family with the love interests, a mob showed up and killed her and the boy. The parents were already taken away by essentially the Inquisition and died horribly. And she ended up getting her head cut off and put on a stick, and causing the tragedy at the end where Devil Man lost his faith in humanity. It was his breaking point. And then, like, shortly afterwards, it ends with his final battle against the devil, and they both die at the end, and then God comes down and reset the world. But this is Gona Guy. His version of God is that he's a jerk. Anything with Gona Guy, if God's involved, most likely he's a jerk somehow.
Yeah,
But
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yes, because we didn't have an actual discussion about it where we could discuss the nuances, what actually appeals to people about it, and actually be, well, mature about the whole thing.
You can't really call it a debate. It was more like a
destruction.
Oh,
I
right.
was going to say an endless
squad.
ram, but I was going to say a circular ram, but that works too.
Yeah, I kind of wish Noble could articulate his points better, because then you might have actually had something instead of just wasted all your time.
Yeah. I would say
Because
my
it's like
favorite-
there are arguments against Grimdark, and it seemed Noble knew none of them.
Yeah, that's right. That is
Yeah,
pretty
we can
correct.
like I could definitely bring up like the problems, because Grimdark is a balancing act.
Yes.
Yeah.
In terms of both the people who like Grimdark and the writers
We
of
are
Grimdark.
Chelsea. Indeed, we are Chelsea. I do apologize, Ninja. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problems.
Yeah. So this time we are. I had no illusions that it would be a mature and reasonable discussion with Noble. I was just letting him ramble because I thought that it would be hilarious.
And somehow it got back to porn.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, because I wanted to see if he actually would come up with defenses, and eventually, thankfully, he was able to admit that physical dependency is a thing. So I was like, great, we made progress. But this is kind of what This is kind of what I was thinking.
Holy moly. Jorg. I hope that's how you pronounce it. I read this. I didn't listen to the audiobook. Jorg. Jorg. It's a strange name for a protagonist. A lot of strange choices for a protagonist. And this one, it's storming outside, which is oddly fitting for a lot of the things I'm about to say about this book. But if you're a huge fan and you get mad at me saying that because you think I'm about to just solidly roast it, that's not the case. I want to go ahead and say right here at the beginning, I feel that the author accomplished exactly the goals he set out to, and he did a magnificent job of that. Mark Lawrence wrote this story to have you follow the most despicable, unlikable, garbage protagonist ever, and every line of Jorg's thoughts and dialogue make you want to shower. He is a garbage person. Really, Mark Lawrence's writing just drips with venom and disgusting thoughts. Oh, I hated reading this book, but I'm well aware there are going to be many people out there who love this, because some people like following the worst people. And if you are one of those people, link to buy the book in the description down below using my Amazon affiliate link. support the channel, because this book is probably exactly up your alley, because I have never seen a protagonist be given 0 redeemable qualities before. Jorg is literally like my worst nightmare as a person. He is a rapist, murderer, self-absorbed, views everyone else as an object, sociopath, who I would, if I was locked in a room with him, I'd probably just kill myself, because I don't know. I want to shower reading his thoughts. Ugh. So if that sounds appealing to you, I'm not talking about like, oh, he's evil, like Glotka is evil, but like Glotka you can understand, it's relatable, like wins a lot, he does some horrible things, he's kind of charming in a weird way, he's intelligent, like you want to, no. Jorg is just a monster. The worst thing ever as a person monster. He's not even Ted Bundy, or like he was a charming, no, he's not a charming person. It's more like just Ramsey, but he's your protagonist, and arguably a worse person. Maybe they're like right on the same level of just awfulness as human beings. Ramsey from Sunflower, not Gordon Ramsay. Although he seems like a bit of a jerk. That's kind of a character. Moving on. So if you've been craving a story that does that, specifically, that is the only people I will recommend Prince of Thorns to. If you wake up in the morning and you're like, I want a protagonist who makes me feel like I need to bathe, Prince of Thorns, it's never been done better in my knowledge. Just following baby tiny in the making. He's a young child. And according to some quick Googling, apparently saying that specific dictator's name can get me flagged in YouTube. So I'm going to bleep it. And from now on, I'll just say tiny, evil German man. Is he short? I'm going to assume he was short. He probably wasn't, but I'm just going to say so because I like that. Yeah, he's a tiny, evil German dictator equivalent in the making, and he's like 14. And he's the worst 14-year-old ever. I severely hate him. If he was the antagonist in a equally as well-written story, I would be praising the author for writing one of the best villains I've come across in fantasy. I applaud you for it.
Okay.
Pretty accurate summary, actually.
So he managed to do something that, like, Shad Brooks tried to do. And more consistently, people enjoyed.
I think, yeah. Well, I've heard mixed things about Prince of Thorns because a lot of the complaints around Jorg Ankrath is that he's a little bit of a Gary Stew. Which
Is it kind of like a villain protagonist sort of thing?
I would say yes.
Yeah, because when he was going on that rant, who came to my mind? Eric Cartman.
Interesting. Please
He
elaborate.
is South Park Grimdark. I guess it might depend on the season.
It's more. I think not.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
if you take the universe seriously, like it is kind of full of absurdities.
Yeah.
And I think you did a spectacular job. It's written in first person, by the way, and that drove me nuts. I know some people don't mind it. I hate first person stories, but his writing style was so good. I just kind of was able to slip by it. His writing style is magnificent. Mark Lawrence is a great writer, but if you hate first person writing, you might be bothered by that as I was reading this. But he puts you in the head of this just because you're following like Joffrey level caliber of evil here. So yeah, his thought process is the way he views other people is they're all just to be used. They're nothing. Ugh. This book was exhausting. I'm gonna be honest. Like I didn't like reading it, but I respect how well it did what it wanted to do. Wow. But to anyone who wants to read Grimdark and thinks, oh, this seems like the most Grimdark, let's start there. No. Because Prince of Thorns, while it did execute its character work, as I've talked about, fantastically, everything else was good to meh. I found the world building to be meh. The first person perspective kind of made it so Jorg was so self-centered and
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. So we have a dude in the back chat, a very fine dude. So let's bring it in. Wingapo.
Dude.
Are you there, Perion? Oh no. Are you there? If you're talking, we can't hear you.
Yeah. So that's kind of one thing where who is that guy? Daniel Green, who I have mixed opinions about. He kind of shilled a little bit for Wheel of Time, but eventually he was like, you know what? Season 1 was kind of a bad season. And then he was like, Season 2 is kind of weak too. Odd. Let me mic check. Yeah, your mic is up to about 80%. So
Yeah, by the time he gets it fixed, he's gonna kill all our ears.
that is wholly possible. But what are some other examples of grimdark fiction? Like, I would say that Mark Lawrence is kind of an example of the strengths and weaknesses of grimdark, where he can create a good character, but the problem is it focuses. Oh, there's a lack of focus at points.
Okay, this might be a little cheating a little bit. All Quiet on the Western Front. I would say that's classified as grimdark.
I'm not familiar with that, actually.
Well, it's
a book that was written by a guy, essentially writing about his experiences in World War I through fiction, and it's a anti-war book about the horrors of World War I trench warfare, set during the final days of the conflict. It has been adapted multiple times, and it's now actually the original German book is now officially the public domain because it was released 100 years ago.
Yes.
Or like 90 years ago.
Well, either way. Yeah, and as the book describes, and as World Ninja has described as well, it is pretty bleak in some cases.
I guess what kind of determines the difference between grimdark fiction and kind of a biopic about a biopic book, I suppose you could put it. Yeah, still inaudible. I'm sorry. All right, Brian, I don't know what I legitimately do not know what is going on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So grimdark versus a biopic?
Like
Yeah,
grimdark versus historic arc stuff.
Historic can't be grimdark by definition because we don't know how history ends.
That's true.
Well, same with the Grimdark.
Hey.
Oh, we're hearing you now.
Oh,
Hallelujah.
Hello.
Aloha.
so I fixed my mic settings and then you still couldn't hear me, so I just X'd out of here and went back in again. So here I am.
Ah, lovely. It all works out.
I would disagree with you, Drake, about that because Grimdark Grimdark works with the idea that there is no real ending. It's all about what's going on in the world because it's even if you end the story with a heat death of a universe, it's still the unknown is still like part of the grim darkness. Like you don't know how the universe will end.
It also might be a matter of relative because it's like if there's certainly some cases where it's like if you're reporting history from a very dark time, like say the Holocaust, it can definitely come off very grim dark. I wouldn't necessarily call it that though, because it's like grimdark you generally associate with fiction, not real things, and so it feels kind of like tawdry to like group them together, if you know what I mean.
Like yeah, you can definitely like okay. So the question is the fantasy element important in a grimdark story?
Oh, what you mean, me speculative?
Yeah,
So-
like
Okay.
like fantasy as in like general fantasy, like the make believe stuff.
For example, is Zola Grimdark?
Zola. I'm not sure I know what that is.
Emile Zola. He wrote kind of. He was extreme realist in the late 19th century. He wrote depressing stuff. What was the one I read where the two lovers kill each other because they murdered her husband, and then the mother-in-law, who has had a stroke and can't move or talk, but she watches them with glee as they both kill each other at the end. Is that grimdark? I mean, it's realistic, but it's not fantasy. But is it grimdark?
That's a good question. I'm thinking there has to be, since one of the parts of the definition of grimdark, at least, is speculative fiction, which is it's basically it encompasses all genres that depart from strictly imitating everyday reality, instead presenting fantastical, supernatural, futuristic, or other imaginative realms.
Okay, in that case, by definition, it would not be grimdark, but it's still pretty depressing. In fact, it's more depressing than say, A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, it's like the fact that something happened for real automatically adds a little more depressing factor to it because it's not somebody made it up.
Well, he did make it up. It's just it's not in an imaginary world. It's in the real world. But he did. I guess he did make up the facts. He might have taken them from a newspaper. I don't remember at this distance of time. But he did write this. He did write a story. So it's not. It's fiction, but it's not necessarily. It's not fantasy at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's if we're talking about it requires like a fantastical or fantasy element, are we talking about it has to be set within like a fantasy or sci-fi world? To be more akin to what we're talking about, grimdark.
I would suggest so because it's like you need to have like a full control of the world in order to assure that it is grimdark, because even reality has bright spots to it.
As well as elements of a measure of divine comedy to a certain extent.
Yeah, but on the other hand, even in something like A Song of Ice and Fire, there are some bright spots.
I think that is one of the major things that separates bad grimdark from good grimdark, is that grimdark, by definition, is very bleak and depressing by definition, even sometimes dystopian. But there are elements of good people there to make it so that there's some element of realism in there. Because if it's just bad people, then it just comes off as try hard.
And who cares anyway? If horrible things are happening to horrible people, who cares?
Yeah. If it's horrible things happening to good people, or at least semi-moral people, then there creates some stakes. Because also, it's one of the reasons why we like Jon Snow, is because George R. R. Martin is willing to put his protagonist through really bad stuff.
He didn't want it.
She McQueen.
I
Don't want it.
There's nothing more grimdark than bad dialogue. You've got to admit.
Oh, hi, Mark.
You English think you're so great because you have boats.
No, we have tea. That's the difference.
Also,
But
who
yeah,
was that?
That last one was from the Napoleon movie.
Okay.
Oh God, no. Is that the new one?
Yes, the new one.
Oh
You know,
God.
the horror that line. But so I think Grimdark most of the time does not tend to go overboard, because Grimdark, in my opinion, you either had to have hope in it, in terms of, even in the setting, there has to be like a win condition. Like, for example, Warhammer 40k, every faction has a win condition.
Yeah, but none of them are going to get there.
Right, because primarily it's a tabletop game. So they're not going to end the universe unless they stop selling the products. Until until people stop buying the products. But then you also have that was also the result of purchasing products and whatever. Huge list of things. Or the other way is that you have to make it over the top stupid and treat it with a tongue-in-cheek tone to the story. Like in classic, like old school Warhammer, the way they load their guns in their big battle barges was involving a bunch of slaves, just literally carrying the big missiles to put into the big guns to fire it.
Wouldn't it be a riot if someone did a Grimdark, a deadly serious Grimdark, where the tragic thing was that they couldn't sell their product?
That actually is. I think that's probably been done in something like Warhammer, I imagine, because there are people
it's bound to happen.
There are people in there called rogue traders. They're especially space pirates or merchants who will just raid enemies of humanity or humanity itself and just rove around, trying to sell things. And it could just be evading the armies of chaos. It probably has happened. I don't know enough about like specific Warhammer 40k mechanic stories other than a few specific instances, like the Demon Calabra. Which that's some messed up stuff.
I'll try the family's Bile novels.
Fabulous Bill.
Yes.
Fabulous Bill.
With his pimp cane.
You know what's the funny part, Dunn? The guy who wrote the Demon Calabra story went on to work with Riot Games, and he's one of the writers for Arcane.
Really?
Yeah.
I liked Arcane. Arcane was pretty
good.
That
was a lot of things, actually.
Yeah.
That's
Arcane I would actually not describe Arcane as all that grimdark, all things considered.
Well, yeah, because the universe, because it's League of Legends, it's kind of like a universe where like their main MOBA system is made so that no nations would go at all-out war. So like it's more of like a hope punk. You want to say like, oh, it's hope. We can actually settle our differences. We just have to put our conflicts into the arena.
Hope is like the sun.
Hope is the first step on the road to disappointment.
Yeah.
Well, actually
cry
League of Legends is like a G Gundam.
Fair enough.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. Come on. Nations send fighters to represent them and to settle global disputes.
Yeah, it's basically how the final match went, with everybody just free for rolling.
Hope is like a rock that doesn't go down on ups. We are getting season 2 of that later this year. It's going to be great. It's going to be so fun.
I can hear the sarcasm in your voice.
Hope is like a rock. Is that a line from Rings of Power?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, it's a ship floats while a rock sinks because it looks up. It's at the very beginning of the show.
And it is retarded.
And then
Every line
the
in that
how do I
show.
know which way is up speech. It's like, do we need to get you people balloons because you don't know which way is up?
Okay, let's just.
Let's get back on topic. And like this, that it is
Yes.
fun to make fun to rip on Rings of Power for how crap it is. But let's get to Grimdark. So, if we could kind of take a look at what the most popular Grimdark pieces of fiction are, what would you guys say are the most popular Grimdark pieces of fiction, and why do you think they appeal to people?
Obviously 40K, but
Yeah, but let's just go over Warhammer for now. So Warhammer, for first off, in like the original Warhammer fantasy setting, it was the first. It was one of the earliest fantasy war games, big scale. It started out as Games Workshop having the excuse for people to buy their D&D models to make a mass combat game, and then they just evolved the universe over multiple editions. So, back in the 80s, I think if it being like one of the first does help it to have people get attached to Warhammer Fantasy. And then 40K is like taking the most popular trope of sci-fi, which is at that time more popular than fantasy, and probably so is now. And people would prefer that, which led to the kind of fantasy, and then led us into Age of Sigmar and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
it's like one of the greatest strengths of it's like I'm not as well versed in fantasy, but in 40K especially, there's always something for everybody. Pretty much no matter what kind of person you are, there's gonna be an army for you.
Yeah, because the way the fantasy works is, do you like a historical empire or historical culture? Most likely they combined it with a fantasy race, and there's your faction.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that I haven't read Dark Tower, but I've heard that it is decently dark. Yeah, I would say that A Song of Ice and Fire does count. Yes.
What about Outlander? We're back again to it's in the real world, but it is a fantasy. But it's set in the real world, but it also involves time travel. So it is a fantasy, but it's, from what I've seen so far, a lot of it is horrible things happening to people.
Yeah, I think that would fit actually, by virtue of the fact that it has time travel and it is semi-alternative history.
Yeah, I mean, there's these magic stones, and there's a bunch of people who time travel through the magic stones and things. So yeah, it's definitely fantasy. So, and the show anyway is very, very good. But yeah, what horrible thing will happen to them now? In fact, kind of worse things happen to sometimes you find worse things happening to people than happen in A Song of Ice and Fire sometimes.
Yeah, history is generally a lot darker than a lot of fiction writers are willing to go in some cases.
Yeah, so they have like really, but even in terms of fiction, no problem. They have like really nasty things happen to protagonists.
Such as, what are some examples?
Sadistic gay rape.
Oh dear.
Sorry if I triggered someone. Also, I got your channel demonetized if you were monetized in the first place.
I don't know if that's enough.
Oh, it is. I'm pretty sure it is because people like Rorus and whatnot will say the R word instead of saying RAPE, the actual word.
Okay, I guess sexual assault.
Yeah, it's too late though. Now you're already demonetized. So sorry.
Yeah,
I did it on purpose too. I was bribed to.
clearly. So TLJ stands for The Last Jedi.
Yes.
So this is an interesting comment. Conan the Barbarian is a precursor to Grimdark. I would agree with that. Same with Elric of Melniboné.
I would
Yes, I was gonna
say
say that.
yes to. I would say yes to Elric, but no to Conan.
Okay. What would be kind of the difference between the two that makes one Grimdark and the other not Grimdark? What would be the difference?
So both have like horrible worlds, but I think Elric has that because he has a sword that talks to him that says to drink blood, and he himself doesn't have a lot of redeeming qualities. As opposed to like
Plus, he is
Conan,
destined to die.
essentially.
I'm sorry, I was
Like
interrupting you, I
Conan
apologize.
is, I'm sorry. Yeah, Conan is, as a character, is a lot more honorable because it's part of the theme about how the wilderness is where true honor and true morality comes from, as opposed to civilization, how civilization corrupts people, and also just in general, you don't get the feeling like that. It's more of like the classic pulp. Like classic pulp, the most grim dark things stops when Conan shows up, essentially. Like Conan is just like this force of nature type character that stops the evil that's around him in some sort, even though he does participate in some evil actions, but I have not read Called the Conqueror, so I can't judge that.
Yeah, and also to swing back to Elric a little bit, he's also destined to die, so he has a tragic ending to his story. Exactly. Well, he's doomed to die. Sorry.
Yeah, he's doomed to die. He is messed up, and his people's messed up. Like he was purposely made to be the like. The difference is that Elric was purposely made to be the anti-Conan. That's another reason. So Elric tends to just make things worse.
Yep.
Yeah, he starts off as. I haven't read much of Elric of Melniboné.
I've read the first 10 novels.
Okay. Yeah, I've read a little bit of them.
Yeah. I would actually recommend the graphic novels. Actually, they are far more. What's the best way to put it? It's like
I read the graphic novels, and I read pretty much the first 3 big volumes. After that, it's like I'm done with Elric. I do not like those. I personally don't like it.
I read the first couple of books. Well, no, I've read the first bit of book 1, I think. Like I listened to it. I don't know how far I got. I wasn't necessarily like the biggest fan of it. I was like, it's okay. It's just the style wasn't driving with me. I have a similar problem with Dragon Riders of Perion. Oh, that's actually a good discussion to have. Would Titus Andronicus count? I would say yes, because it is kind of alternative history, and they go like,
is that the one that? Is that the
Yeah.
one where like the girl gets her hands cut off and her tongue?
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I heard
So
of that.
if we're going into ancient history, we're no longer in the realm of modern fantasy and stuff. It's more like a precursor to fantasy than actual fantasy, right?
Yeah, there's kind of there. It's your personal preference.
That's horrible. Don't cut off girls. I agree with that. It's gross.
Yeah, it was. It was very much a. I think the best way to describe it is Shakespeare's exploitation Asian play.
Well,
Yeah,
it is.
to be
yeah,
fair, he probably got
that's
it.
accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, he probably got it from some ancient source that was just as bad, if not worse.
No, I'm pretty sure he got it from an ancient source that is exactly what's in the play.
Yeah.
Because honestly, the story is horrible,
Actually-
but you know, not horrible in terms of quality, but like the events. But like in the context of history, yeah, it would definitely be a thing.
Thyestes and all that.
It was
I
thought
don't
to be
know
his
if
first trilogy. All made up as far as I can see.
Interesting. Can't read that
There's
font. Let's see.
I can. I've got it on a giant TV, which kind of skews things for me, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't do those advanced modern TVs.
Well, this is actually not even modern. This is actually probably like 10 years old at this point. 10, 15 years old.
Yeah, like I said, modern.
Fair enough. But yeah, there isn't really a historical like basis for this play other than the setting. Everything appears to be fictional.
Yeah, because Thyestes, there's Thyestes and all that in antiquity. There's all sorts of. Oh, and there's what was it about? Zeus castrating his Uranus or something? Whatever that guy's name is.
I think it was Kronos. So
Oh yeah,
as far
right.
as
You're
I
right.
will-
Right. You're right.
Yes,
Kronos did that, and then Kronos ate his children.
And then Zeus did the same thing that Kronos did to Uranus or Uranos.
Yeah. Let's see. The Victorian era. Yeah, I mean there is a. Let's see. Does it say anything here about sources? Anything about sources? I'm checking. Setting and sources. Sources. Get on my way.
So
may have consulted the Gesta Romanorum, a well-known 13th century collection of tales written in Latin, which took figures from history and spun fictional tales around them. Okay. And there was a Matteo Bandello who also did similar things, but not necessarily this exact story. It's also possible. Okay. Some bits of it are from Ovid's Metamorphoses, but does he actually have all that stuff you were talking about, where the eyes and cutting out hands and eyes or whatever it was? I don't remember anymore. No, he does cut out her tongue. Oh, and he rapes her too. Oh, sorry, I did it again.
Let's just say he raped her.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man.
Oh yeah, it's nasty. Yeah, it's a pretty similar story, but the names of the characters are different. But it looks like it's a pretty similar story in Ovid.
Yep. All right.
So, but anyway, yeah. That's if that were in a story today, I'd call it in a fantasy story today. I would call it Grimdark.
Oh yeah.
might even be called Grimdark, where it just goes so ridiculously far.
If people saw,
Yeah,
if
possibly.
people saw,
Well,
This is actually funny. Sorry. My sources I made it to bleep up. That actually is kind of funny.
yeah,
I like that.
yeah. It's apparently a quote from Metal Gear Solid, I think.
Who?
Yes.
Metal Gear.
Yeah.
It's a video game.
Yes.
yeah. What else?
You mentioned Berserk.
Actually, this is
Yes.
yes. Would you
I am
actually?
not-
Here's a funny thing: as for video game interpretations, would you classify Homewood as grimdark? Done.
I haven't gotten the chance to play it.
I recommend
fair,
you don't look up
okay.
images of Berserk.
Oh,
There's
why
some
not?
lovely. The art is lovely, but you
Yeah,
may find
yeah.
very disturbing images. That the manga does not shy away with some of its visuals.
I
Horse
think
penis.
thankfully it's it does look like so far like we're okay. Like I haven't seen anything bad.
I'm not trusting this internet.
Don't trust Google. Don't trust Google.
I'm not trusting. Just
What are you Googling? Don't be careful what you Google.
I just Googled Berserk.
Yes.
Oh.
Listen to the Count Bard.
Listen to the count bard. Who do you think I am? I'm not Tarek.
Oh. Done. Sorry.
It's well, I mean, it can, given that Tarek calls Codex noble, I don't think it can complain.
yeah, but yeah. So what were you asking about Berserk?
Well, I'm just like, what would you say the thing about Berserk that is the main appeal of it, despite being one of the grimdark of grimdarks?
Early on, it's in the style. It definitely follows the style of the pulps of like Sword and Sorcery. So if you read like the first couple of volumes, you get that feeling, and then after that, like essentially, it's the journey of guts, the journey of the characters that that you get.
We do have a guy in the chat, which I think I haven't. Well, no, I'm not going to use that quote. I'm going to see. I respect him too much. Let's just bring him in with his usual.
Yo, you
Evening.
Hello.
spoke to me too much.
Your intro is longer than the actual live stream.
We were only about an hour in. Yeah, I get the joke. Funny. But
So
holy crap! Freaking, you should have gone for the meme. Done. That's all I'm going to say. You should have just gone for the meme. I really do not care.
You sure?
no.
About what?
Well, let's see what the alternative was, my dude. What were you going to do? Because now I have to know.
Maybe he's just a reckless and irresponsible jackass.
No, just mean. Comparing to Benioff is just mean.
Hi, Noble. I see you in the chat over there.
It's okay.
So anyway,
He's on
I've
this,
actually
don't
managed. Yeah, I've actually managed to read through Volume 1 of Berserk, which I actually have the leather-bound book on my nightstand. So I can't exactly say that I'm qualified to explain why all of Berserk is absolutely gorgeous and incredible, but I can
Yes.
explain what I thought about Volume 1 of Berserk. So, what I actually, I think Literature Devil did a pretty good job of describing the Edgelord. Isn't really the callousness or coldness so that makes us like the character. It's the fact that they put on the front of being an edgelord, because the idea of the edgelord is that it's a superficial thing, but really there is something that the edgelord really, really cares about. And by the time you finish up Volume 1, yeah, you know immediately what Guts really cares about. But so I guess some general thoughts that I also have on Grimdark as a genre, as a whole, is that it's just a very simple and beautiful way of exploring the nature of humanity, just in general. Like,
Yes.
you're facing a person against the existential horrors of the universe and all that stuff, and it's very important that the character's relatable. It's very, very important, because that's kind of the idea of it, is that you take a common man, but you put him in a universe that is so outlandishly horrifying. Yeah, that right over there. Lovecraftian horror is definitely grimdark. Absolutely.
Yes.
No other way about it.
I would say Junji Ito is a bit better, but that's just me.
I mean, I think the greatest archetype, the one that stands out to me the most is, and I hate to bring this one up, but freaking Onelius Pius, his story in 40K specifically, well, the Horus Heresy anyway. It's like, yeah, this is a man, just a regular ass human being, going up to basically a demigod of chaos and destruction, and he's standing between him and the only chance humanity has to brave, well, the darkness to come. And he is saying, he's going up to him, it's like, raise your maw, fallen one, and fight. I won't move, and I'll hold the line, all that other shit. Yes, Harbinger is a great-ass song. You should listen to it, even if the performance isn't all there. But the most important part of that is, like, Onelius Pius knows he's fucked. He knows that he's dead, and that the second he dies, his soul will probably be ripped apart. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not OP wins the fight. The fact of the matter is that he stood against corruption and darkness embodied. He stood up against the callous hatred of reality, and he went out screaming like a friggin' Chad. He went yelling into that cold, dark night. So yeah, like, the raging against the dying of the light, that is the phrase that I think best describes Grimdark.
Yeah, it's the indomitable human spirit in the face of really hefty darkness, I think, is one of the main appeals.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like, you will probably get the most heroic characters imaginable from these sort of settings. Even if they themselves are flawed individuals and human beings, those elements makes them more human and more relatable in that sense. Because, cast the first stone, he who has committed no sin.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Dune. Is Dune grimdark? I don't know.
I haven't seen it to conclusion, so I would not know.
I would, reading the first book, I would, and knowing what happens in general with the series, I would not say so. It's more classic sci-fi.
I mean, it is one of the oldest sci-fis out there. And if you really want to stretch the definition of the term, Frankenstein is considered sci-fi.
not everything where the general story arc of the universe goes in a sad direction of like evil being prevalent means that it's grimdark. Grimdark is about it's gonna get worse. That phrase where it's like, oh, you think what you're experiencing is bad? Guess what? It's gonna get worse.
I mean, I wouldn't exactly use the phrase "it's gonna get worse" to describe all of Grimdark, but that is definitely a phrase you can, in fact, use to describe it. That's pretty fair.
Right.
But yeah, just from what I've gathered, like some readings of Lovecraftian works that I found online, yeah, I can safely call Lovecraft's work kind of grim dark because the idea, because of what Ninjato over there just described, it just gets worse.
Yeah, especially since a lot of Lovecraft's work is built on the humanity is horrifically insignificant and unequipped to deal with these entities on even just a mental level, where they are just because just looking at these creatures is so terrifying that their mind is destroyed.
Yeah, it's also it's kind of like playing around with the fragility of the mind.
Yeah, I think A Song of Ice and Fire, when Catelyn Stark watches her son die, she goes crazy, and it starts clawing at her face, and she thinks it's ravens are raking her face with their talons, and it's a real and like little things like and somebody grabs her hair and her immediate thought isn't she's just like, don't cut my hair, Ned loves my hair, because she's just gone completely crazy.
Yep. That's also another thing that I noticed you can really get away with Grimdark, is that you can basically just explore the deepest, darkest depravities of the human experience. And that's kind of just expected. That's just straight up expected of the genre. I mean, it's what we are here for. It isn't just regular old dark stuff where it's like, oh, it's edgy. This is some edgy shit. It's like no, we're going to explore the absolute bottom of the barrel, and you're going to see it, and you're going to recoil.
Ramsay.
Yeah. Don't know what that is.
Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah, there are people that are worse. I think that Tywin Lannister, to a certain extent, even though he's not a sadistic sociopath, I think he's worse.
Because he genocided the entire Castamere family? Not Castamere, Reigns.
I mean, so far for me,
he killed both of them. He also he ordered the deaths of Ilya Martell and her two children, and gave the task to two of the most evil butchers in A Song of Ice and Fire, and was willing to send those types of men into the Riverlands and said, do whatever you want. I basically give you carte blanche to do whatever awful things you want.
Yeah, there are times when even when Gurm just gets carried away, like it's a little excessive. Like, was there really a need for? Oops, are we getting to spoiler territory? I guess the books have been available for a decade now. Over a decade.
I think the statute of
it's
free.
Over a dozen years now since the last one. So anyway, I think having Astapor, I think would have been sufficient to have Astapor be taken over by the tyrant, and this Now the former slaves are masters, but it's the same deal. That would have been
This makes
Grimdark.
sense.
There was no need to have Astapor get destroyed on top of that. That's just excessive, unnecessary. So, yeah. So sometimes Grim gets a bit carried away.
Yeah, I mean, which franchise are we talking about at this point?
Song of Ice and Fire. Sorry. Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah. I've never actually read the books. I've only seen the show. Very unfortunate, I know.
Yeah, that's a deep tragedy.
George R. R. Martin, hurry up! Yeah, Martin, hurry up and finish those stupid books already.
Can you at least give us one more book? Come on! And I don't. When I say one more book, I don't mean wild cards. I mean actual Song of Ice and Fire book. I don't mean I don't mean a cookbook either.
Yeah, please give us a book that has actual merit.
You know what's the real problem? I think, like, this is gonna be a bit of a side tangent, but the thing that I'm looking at George R. R. Martin over there, I'm thinking, bro got rich and famous, and he's resting on his laurels. That's what's going on, and he's just riding the wave of publicity and all the other shit all the way up to the top, and he just sort of gave up. He doesn't seem to really care all that much. And, well, writing is very difficult. It doesn't get easier as you age. So
no, it does not. I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially something as brazenly complex as freaking Game of Thrones, with all these different subplots and schemes and backstabbings and betrayals going on, and plot threads.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those. It's one of those things I look at and I just get saddened by. And not to get too political, it kind of reminds me of how I feel about Biden. I'm like, bro, you need to retire. You've done good. I say you've done good. You've done your thing. Go back home with your wife and kids. Enjoy your life. Yada, yada, yada. You've already done it. You're up at the top. You don't need to do anything more.
Quit while you're behind.
There's a phrase.
Yes.
Yeah. To be fair,
here's a question.
Sorry.
Wait.
I was just going to say that. To be fair,
No,
Grim is probably busy watching football, American football right now. Now carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. Here's a question. Would you count War of the Worlds as Grimdark?
War of the Worlds?
I would not say so because it had a happy ending.
I would concur with that. I think that's a fake.
Yeah, I guess Grimdark has an element of tragedy to it, and I mean that in the classical sense, where not the people do not get what they deserve, and sometimes it ends in tragedy, for lack of better terms. Everything goes wrong for our heroes. The tragic flaws exploited. There's the catharsis, the release, and yeah.
I mean, Jon Snow is a good example of tragic flaws. Being brought down by tragic flaws because he is very arrogant, and he just sends all his friends away. I don't need my friends with me. I'm the Lord Commander. Well, apart from Dolorous Ed, I don't need my friends. I'm the Lord Commander. Whoops! Now I'm surrounded by my enemies. Well, apart from the wildlings, so I now have to rely on the wildlings. I can't rely on the rest of the watch anymore. So next thing you know,
Snip. Dead. Yeah, I would concur with that.
Also, do not look up the Black Goat with Lovecraft in the search bar. You will get demonetized or canceled.
Yikes!
Yeah, I know about Shub. bro, what was
Okay.
he thinking?
So so here's the question. What are the biggest weakness of Grimdark?
Well, I think my answer is pretty much
I
the
would
same as it
say-
was last time.
Yeah,
It's
that it can kind of go into the realm of parody fairly fast, like with Excalibur.
absolutely
Figure.
like I remember some artwork someone showed of these giant freaking high caliber freaking shells being loaded into an Imperial gun, and they're being loaded in by like thousands of slaves. I'm just like, bro, what the fuck? What is this? How? It's parodies. But Don, you don't have to show them that. You don't have to show them that. But yeah,
I'm just
a
playing
lot of
40K art.
yeah, a lot of it can easily become extremely friggin' derpy. You could take it to a point of absurdity that the audience is just like, "Is this your barely hidden fetish or something?"
No comment.
It also can be very preachy too.
Yeah, like it can't. Like sometimes you can just be like, "Oh, religion bad, religion bad, religion bad," or it's just
Not
like,
just
"Oh,
that, it can also
fascism
be
bad,
like-
fascism bad, fascism bad." It can just become like that and just beat
but
you
it's
over
not
the
just
head
that,
with
it
its
can be
theme.
just like the cycle of violence if done incorrectly, exactly, which is very easy to do, exactly.
Oh, absolutely. Like cycle of
Well, I think
violence
that's
is just
what's
one of
true.
those things.
Yeah, like we mentioned, Grimdark can just get a bit carried away. We mentioned Gurm as an example of that, and Gurm is one of the better. Well, I can't really say because there's a lot of Grimdark I've not read, but it's a masterpiece, an incomplete masterpiece, but still a masterpiece. But it goes too far, like Astapor getting destroyed, and I think I'll make Arya eat some worms, and it's just like you're just trying to be gross now.
Yep, absolutely. It can definitely get into
As eating
being
people.
self-indulgent.
Yep.
And like DJ over here said, when there's no nuance or purpose for the dark tone, like it is just dark for the sake of it, rather than utilizing it to drive home at a theme.
Mhm.
And a very, very touchy one is misogyny. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but basically, a grimdark author can just straight up write his setting as hilariously misogynistic to the nth degree that it makes Athens look progressive. And it's just like, but why?
Oof.
This isn't even realistic anymore. Just why?
Yeah, it can kind of get to a point where it's just.
Oh,
I know
that
this is cartoon. This is meant to be dark, but it's cartoonish darkness.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You could definitely get over there.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
stop for a second. Go up. The bright white image over there. Click on that.
This one.
The one below it.
This one.
That right over there. That is the best part of Grimdark to me. Just this regular ass human who was only like 20-something years old, about to kill with this guy with balls of steel, killing a 10,000-year-old chaos marine who was around to see when their god emperor was walking amongst men. This little shit face over here who slaughtered millions in the name of the dark gods is about to get killed by some guy with balls of steel in a melt-a-bomb. That's awesome. Need I say anything more?
Fair enough.
Like that is heroism right over there, and I love that. That's a thing, and that's just such a prevalent thing in the setting.
I think
Anyway,
also
right next.
it also makes I was just gonna mention a big part of Grimdark I think is either the relatability of some characters within the setting where you're actually concerned about the welfare of your characters, since a lot of Grimdark will focus on ensemble casts.
Yeah.
From what I've most of the Grimdark I've read, at least, a lot of it is an ensemble
Yes.
cast where you can then shuffle off people depending on the needs of the plot.
Yep. Absolutely. Also, the image above that done, friggin' glorious.
What are we looking at?
That one over there.
Arch.
Yeah, I believe that is Macarius right over there. Space Alexander the Great, as we like to call him, because that is literally, his story is literally just Alexander the Great, but in space. Oh,
Yeah.
Sanguinius
Classic.
ripping out Angron's freaking butcher's nails. Another glorious moment. Our glorious golden hawk boy, Mr. freaking Archangel Michelangelo, friggin' ripping out Satan's head, Satan's hair.
But Angron survived.
Well, yeah, he gets resurrected and all that other shit, but come on, the guy's brains explodes immediately after he rips out those things. That's just awesome.
Yep.
He gets banished to the warp. He might be alive, but he's out of the fight for a very long time after that. You don't come back from that in one piece. Sorry to get on to the side tangent, but friggin' Sanguinius has like a lot of angelic imagery, and for very good reason. He is basically just a reference to the Archangel Michael.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I will
Again, very
end
iconic.
up. Oh yeah, another very iconic piece. Which, speaking of which,
Yeah.
have we touched on how glorious the artwork can be in a lot of grimdark settings?
Yeah, there's some good art.
Hello there, Shy. How have you been?
Aloha. Yeah, like some of the
Hello.
artwork for A Song of Ice and Fire is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is pretty dang cool.
Yeah, done. Type in I am up and I'm a screen. That is very iconic imagery as well.
This?
Oh my god.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you never heard of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream?
I have, but I know nothing about it.
Well, there's not a good drama on YouTube, actually, so you can actually give it a listen.
Yeah. It's like perhaps one of it's one of those classic sci-fis that you just have to know about. If you're into sci-fi and you don't know about this, what are you doing?
Admittedly, I'm not that much into sci-fi, but
That's fair.
I guess I could try. I guess at some time, I suppose.
I mean, well, yeah, that kind of explains it. But this story, perhaps, I remember watching Solar Sands video where he references this this story when he was discussing portrayals of hell, and I don't know how else to describe this setting, but just exactly that.
Kind of like Event Horizon.
You could say that.
Not really, no. More like 2001: Space Odyssey meets.
Should I just go ahead and explain the basic premise?
Go for it. You could just explain the whole plot.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
basically,
if I don't know if I'll ever read it.
Basically, the whole premise of the story is that a AI has grown to hate humanity, has become very vindictive, hates the fact that it was created, and decides to destroy all of humanity, but keep only its creators alive. It basically sticks all its creators into a. Hold on for a second.
Mm-hmm.
basically it takes all of its creators and connects them neurologically into a sort of Matrix-like setting where it torments them for all of existence. Basically the lead scientist behind it. I have no mouth and I must scream. That is exactly what happens to the guy. He gets his mouth taken away, and the AI tells him, now you're going to know what it's like being me, being in pain and suffering and existing like this, but not being able to explain it.
Yeah, do you see that giant slug picture in the down that one?
This?
That's what it turns into.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that is pretty disturbing, actually.
Yep, it's a mix.
Up.
Yeah, it's a mix of body horror, sci-fi horror, and it is very, very much grimdark.
Huh.
Yep.
What that weird thing on the right hand side with all the tentacles and feet? It looks kind of it looks like it could be a cute pet character or something.
Oh, that used to be a human being, by the by.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like.
Which, by the way, can I just say, what a great ass title that is! Just instantly,
title.
Yeah, it instantly tells you so much about the story without you having to actually read it. Oh, yeah, and those cages that you see in the image to the right, that's where the human scientists were locked in.
Okay.
Well, let's see. Are any of you familiar with the Blood Meridian by any chance?
I am not, no.
Okay, because basically I only know about the plot of that story because of the friggin' Windigoon video, the 5-hour-long summarization of the entire story. So I basically have the entire thing spoiled to me. But yeah, that is, you can definitely call that grimdark. And
I think a lot of the best horror is grimdark. When it gets into slasher territory, then it becomes its own kind of nauseating genre or parody genre. In the case of most of the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street films.
Yeah. It gets into camp territory.
Yeah, it just becomes so absurd that it's just like, what's the point?
Yeah, I think the thing for another world kind of the thing for another world kind of goes away from that a little bit. The thing for another world.
I would say that's very much psychological. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. What was I going to say again? Anyway, I lost it. Oh, well, it'll come back to me later. But yeah, that what I think I was getting at is like it's interesting that they managed to take a real life setting, the real world, and turn that into a grim, dark fantasy sort of novel, like a Midwest. That's basically the entirety of the Blood Meridian. It's historic fiction following the Glanston gang, which was a real life gang, by the way, and all of their horrible misadventures. Oh, I just remember what I was saying. Yeah, friggin' slasher films. I was talking about camp. Yeah, camp can be fun and it can be good. There is place for it. However, you have to be aware of the fact that you're not taking your premise seriously anymore. Yeah, basically Grimdark Red Dead Redemption 2. Where Satan is a character.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't
That's not even a joke. The author uses one of the characters for an explicit Paradise Lost reference. and he is also, and his character is also the most evil motherfucker in the entire story.
Dang.
And when I say evil, I genuinely mean revolting.
Dang. Yeah.
So yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite genres, in case any of you couldn't tell. And I have been sort of inundated in it for about 6 years now. Coming up on 6 years. Whenever the hell I first got into 40k, because that is basically my first Grimdark. Baby's first Grimdark.
Basically, yeah.
I mean, it is the entryway. It's the entry drug into the realm of grimdark fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi. Freaking tabletop wargaming in general. I mean, it's very easy. It was very easy for me to get into as well because Star Wars had officially got caught. It went down in flames. I needed another science fiction franchise. The Space Marines kind of reminded me of Clone Troopers, in that they were all brotherly, they have this cool, badass armor, and they serve the Emperor. Yeah, they're more like Stormtroopers in that sense, I guess, but still, they're very, very cool. So the transition was pretty easy. Especially when I saw the Sisters of Battle, I was sold.
Down boy.
What do you mean, down boy? I'm sorry. Have you taken a look at one of the original Codex covers for them? That looks sick. That just looks sick as
based as hell.
Like,
I will agree.
Like freaking the gal pointing out her gun, and there's like a heretic burning in the background, and she's firing, and she's in this cool, sleek jet black power armor. Is like, yes.
I'm being facetious.
Ah. My bad.
So, any other thoughts about Grimdark that we want to bring up?
If you hated your cringe, there's no two ways about it. You're either based or you're cringe, and if you hate it, you're cringe. If you're okay with it, you're based. And notice I said okay with it. You don't even have to actually like it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
Alrighty. Well, I think we can probably call that good, unless anybody else has any thoughts that they want to bring up. And we pretty much just definitively covered a lot of it. Is there?
Yeah, this is the last word on Grimdark.
Damn. I mean, I guess you know what. Doom is a grimdark story. New Doom is grimdark. You start off in the coffin, you know nothing but anger and hatred throughout the entirety of the series. You finally get your moment of peace at last, but then you freaking fall unconscious for a bit, and the next thing you know, you're being put back into the coffin because in reality, you are just a tool to be used by forces beyond your imagination for purposes that you don't fully ever understand.
It sounds too grimdark for me.
All because, well, here's the thing. All because the demons killed your rabbit.
And yes, all because the demons killed your support animal. Your comfort.
Wait, so in that context, it's like, oh wait, how this? It kind of shoots itself in the foot a bit. When it's like...
It depends on how. It depends on the canonicity Doom 2's ending, or I forget which one had the bunny confirms that Daisy was in fact killed by the demons and all this stuff.
I think it
Actually,
was
no,
Doom
no.
2.
You can't. No, wait. Hold up. Daisy does appear as a little, at least a little Easter egg in some levels of Doom Eternal,
And in the
and
the
Hugo
fortress.
Martin does. Yeah, and Hugo Martin does in fact confirm that this isn't the actual bunny. This is the Doomslayer hallucinating the bunny being over there.
Oh,
So-
all right then.
So, yes, the Doom guy did in fact have a little bunny who was horribly killed by the demons, and that was actually his therapy animal because apparently he also lost his wife and kid, got horribly traumatized, got trapped inside of hell for a while, and then came back. So, there's all that other nice stuff. He also apparently really hates himself because the image of his wife and kid also has him in it, and you'll notice that he conveniently ripped his own face out of the image. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
It was a riot.
So yeah, it is still in fact Grimdark, even if the inciting incident's a little derpy. That's my piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it also one thing I would like to mention before we end, I think is also character stuff. Like you're able to do some really creative stuff with grimdark characters that you aren't necessarily able to do with a lot of traditional fiction. Traditional fantasy, I mean. Like or Tyrion Lannister in a lot of traditional fantasy fiction. Would you agree with that, Balerion? At least in terms of Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah, or I mean, Arya's story is pretty as grimdark as almost as grimdark as you can get.
Yeah, it's a little girl learning, basically going down a path of psychopathy. They just 14-year-old girl going down a psychopath route.
Well, she starts out the story of 9 years old, and maybe she's 14 by now, but she starts out as 9 years old.
I think I'm thinking of the show where they aged everybody up by 4 years. I apologize.
Oh no,
yeah,
which is fair, I suppose. But,
yeah,
she was like,
it too.
Yeah, she starts out as 9, and she might not have actually murdered anyone at the age of 9. She might have waited till she was like 10 or 11 or so. But she starts pretty early on though, because she starts murdering people before they leave King's Landing, and it just goes downhill from there.
By the stable boy.
Yeah, so it's pretty grimdark. I'll just spoil. Arya kills the Night King, kill it dead. Don't mention that.
Yeah, I think once a book or show gets to 10 years old, you are allowed to spoil it.
Yeah, I mean at that point,
not really, who don't really want to, really don't want to read it at this point.
Yeah, and what are we gonna do if he does? If 10 years from now he hasn't finished the story, we're still going to be talking about spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, let's be real. As we all learned from friggin' Lord of the Rings, it's not the ending, it's the journey.
Yep.
The Return of the King is the best movie out of the trilogy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I lump them all together as the Lord of the Rings because,
True. I think, a big part is also like characters. Like you can dive into character complexity in a way that I don't think you could with a lot of traditional fiction. Like you can, I don't know if you could create a character like Sandan Glockton anything other than grimdark. The reason being because Sandan Glockta as a character is extremely nuanced, but the reason why he's so nuanced is because he is a really, really bad person who has like suffered a lot of bad things in his life. Like somehow Joe Abercrombie manages to make you feel a lot of sympathy and pity for a man who tortures people for a living.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that that's something I could definitely say about Grimdark that you can't really do in many other genres. Like, how many other genres of fiction do we know of that lets you explore trauma in the way that Grimdark does? Like, really getting into the weeds about it, seeing the source of it, how the character handles it, and reacts to episodes and lapses and so on and so forth. Like, that's a very real thing that people have to go through, particularly war vets, by the way.
Well, yeah, usually.
Absolutely.
Well, with those things you can. So here's the problem with So the main challenge with Grimdark is that, one, you have to actually be competent, and two, a lot of the things that you can explore with Grimdark, you can actually explore with a little bit lighter. Like you mentioned about the trauma aspects, it's like, yeah, a lot of stories have focused on war as the main topic, deals with the similar themes.
Yeah, like
of trauma. It's like
Wheel of Time, for example, is a good example of this, where a lot of the main characters, especially the main character Randall Thor, has a really bad life.
Would you call Turin to Rombar the tale of Turin to Rombar Grimdark?
I would
say...
I brought this up earlier. There are cases where the setting itself is not Grimdark, but then you have like a specific storyline in the setting that is Grimdark, and I would say Turin would count that.
Oh yeah, you were talking in the earlier stream about the distinction between this Grimdark setting and a Grimdark story.
Yeah, because I actually agree with you on that one. You could definitely have a story that wouldn't be out of place in a Grimdark narrative, but is present in a setting that is definitely not.
Yeah, like what's an example?
We did bring up Punisher early on in the stream as an example.
Punisher is actually a good example. Like I think the Netflix TV show of Punisher is probably the best representation of Punisher that exists. Since it's able to go like decently dark, but it never went like parody levels.
Mm-hmm. Which of the Dark Knight's Grimdark?
The Dark Knight, I would say
I would not.
No, it's absolutely not.
Yeah, but like you can have dark elements. Like that's the thing. Like Dark Knight you could say, like the Dark Knight trilogy, you could say approaches Grimdark. Like the Batman can approach Grimdark, but it's not really Grimdark because of other elements to it. Like there's plenty of other elements that kind of make it not so much. Like
it isn't this dreary, grungy sort of tone to it. It's got a bit of some light and optimism in there. It doesn't portray the situation as utterly hopeless or as mankind being on its last legs, or goodness as being on its last legs. It can be, because that's the thing we have to also figure out when we're in this discussion, is the distinction between just a regular dark fantasy or something like that and a grimdark story, because the line between these two is extremely blurry, considering that one is just a more intense version of the other.
Yeah, since usually Grimdark has some measure of intensity about it, where you have a like an overall bleak and depressing tone throughout.
Even if the story itself is a more optimistic tale, it is a matter of the tone that is very important. And as Ninjato over here said, you also have to be very good at what you're doing, or you have to be competent at what you're doing in order to get it just right.
Yeah, because most of the time, attempts of making something grimdark is just silly.
And
it's awful.
Yeah, and to go back to the most infamous example, the Demunculaba.
Yeah.
Demunculabra, I think is how it's pronounced.
I do not care how it's pronounced. That story is shit.
Really? Okay.
It's disgusting. I don't care about the quality of the actual writing itself. I'm just like, this is stupid. You have reached parody level. It's like, oh yeah, we have to take all these women and stitch them all together and make them into a big scary monster that gives birth to real space marines by sticking a regular human male into it. But of course, the marines come out without any skin, so we have to take a regular human, fatten them up to an insane amount, flay them, and then use their skin to put it onto this new space marine we've created. And that is how we could create our new Iron Warriors from now on. Yes, it is as crazy as it sounds. Yes, it's also as stupid as it sounds. And I hope to God it is no longer canon.
Look at the mess.
I mentioned this earlier. Did you know the writer of that story ends up working on Arcane?
What the fuck?
Yes. You can't have him improved, to be fair.
Like,
okay, well, yeah, he's definitely.
And also that demon, that storyline, it was actually part of a bigger book series as well. That is
true. That is true because freaking I forget. I'm blanking on this guy's name. He was a really cool Ultramarine character.
Oh, Uriel Ventress.
Yes, Uriel Ventress. He is an actual character that goes on later. As a matter of fact, I actually have his model. I have his miniature. I haven't even opened up the seal on it yet. I wanted to use him.
It's pretty decent in the tabletop, actually. It's pretty decent.
Yeah, I wanted to convert him into a Marine captain for my homebrew chapter, but I never got around to it.
That's fair. Actually, done. If you want to have a good Grimdark 40k book series, I recommend the Eisenhorn trilogy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Eisenhorn is perhaps the quintessential 40k series. Perhaps even the best out of them all. Like, anybody who gets any single time somebody is trying to get into 40k's lore, everybody points them to the Eisenhorn series, and for good reason.
Okay. Well, I think that that about covers it. Thank you guys for coming. Adios.
Thank you, my good people.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Have a riot.
Bye.